Before we dive in, I've got a quick question for you. Where are you watching from right now, and what time is it? Drop it in the comments. It's always wild seeing how far these stories travel. Now, imagine this. Arthur Morgan, the outlaw, suddenly steps into the GTA 5 universe, a world of fast money, louder guns, and rules that don't forgive hesitation. What happens next? Let's find out. The desert outside Los Santos hums with distant gunfire and radio static, a land where engines snarl louder than the wind and violence moves faster than thought. Then the noise stutters, heat ripples, air buckles, and a horse steps into existence where asphalt should be sacred. Its hooves scrape concrete, confused, alive. Arthur Morgan sits tall in the saddle, eyes narrowed beneath a worn hat, revolver heavy at his side. The city rises before him like a fever dream, glass towers clawing at the sky, metal beasts screaming past at impossible speeds, a sun that feels wrong even as it burns the same. This place smells of oil, sweat, and desperation, and Arthur knows that smell. He's followed it his whole life. Cars blast their horns as they swerve around him. Laughter spills from open windows. Someone raises a phone, not a gun, pointing it at him like a joke. Arthur doesn't flinch. His gaze moves slowly, measuring, cataloging exits, threats, patterns. There's no dust here to hide footprints, no silence to warn of ambush. Everything is loud, everything is watching. A police cruiser rolls by, its lights flicking on too late, unsure what it's even seeing. The officer stares, baffled, then keeps moving. In this city, strange things happen every day. One more doesn't seem worth stopping for. Arthur nudges the horse forward, boots stiff in the stirrups, every instinct screaming that he doesn't belong. Guns crack somewhere deeper in the sprawl, automatic, careless, distant, no challenge, no warning. Just death fired into the air like punctuation. He dismounts beneath a sun-faded billboard promising happiness for a price, hand resting near his holster, breath slow and controlled. Back home, a man survived by reading the land. Here the land is concrete, and it lies without shame. A shout erupts behind him. A deal went bad. Two men arguing, one pulling a pistol with shaking hands. Arthur turns just as the gun goes off. The sound is sharper than he expects, meaner. The victim collapses, blood spreading fast across the pavement, while bystanders scatter like birds. No one helps. No one looks for long. Arthur steps closer, eyes hard, watching the shooter bolt into traffic and vanish. Something cold settles in his chest. This world doesn't just tolerate violence. It consumes it, digests it, moves on. High above, a helicopter cuts across the sky, its shadow crawling over Arthur's boots. Somewhere across the city, men who live by chaos feel a disturbance they can't name. Not fear. Not yet. Just the sense that something old has wandered into a place that eats the unprepared alive. Arthur Morgan lifts his head, jaw set, and starts walking toward Los Santos, unaware that the city has already decided to test him, and that not everyone who does survives. The city doesn't greet him. It challenges him. Sirens wail somewhere too close to be coincidence, and Arthur feels the familiar tightening in his shoulders, the quiet readiness that comes before things turn ugly. He leads the horse through an alley choked with trash and graffiti, every wall screaming names and symbols that he doesn't recognize, territory claimed by people who've never had to carve it from the wilderness. A group of men block the path ahead, their clothes loud, their eyes sharper than their smiles. One of them laughs, steps forward, hand drifting toward his waistband. Arthur stops. He doesn't reach for his gun, and he doesn't need to. His stare alone carries weight. The kind earned through years of surviving men just like this. The laughter fades. Something about him doesn't fit their world. He isn't scared enough. He isn't angry enough. One of them mutters a joke, backs away, and the path opens without a shot fired. Arthur moves through, boots crunching over broken glass, heart steady. Back home, reputation traveled on whispers and graves. Here, it's born in moments like this, when violence is expected and restraint unnerves more than bloodshed. He emerges onto a main road as traffic surges past, engines roaring, music pounding from somewhere inside steel cages on wheels. A bus screeches to a stop inches from him, the driver screaming insults Arthur doesn't understand but doesn't need to. The horse rears, panicked, and Arthur calms it with a low murmur, hand firm against its neck. Too many eyes are on him now, too many phones raised. He feels like an exhibit, a relic dragged into the future and put on display for amusement. Gunfire erupts again, closer this time. A store explodes into chaos as masked men burst out carrying bags, shouting over one another. Automatic weapons chatter without rhythm or respect. Arthur ducks instinctively, dragging the horse behind a concrete barrier as bullets chew into storefronts and spark off metal. He peeks out, assessing. No plan, no discipline, just noise and greed. One robber stumbles, panics, fires wildly into the crowd. Arthur moves before thinking. His revolver clears leather in a blur, a single shot cracking through the din. The robber drops, disbelief frozen on his face. Silence hits harder than the gunshot. The other men freeze, eyes snapping to Arthur like prey spotting a predator they didn't know existed. He doesn't fire again. He doesn't need to. They run, leaving money, weapons, and wounded behind. Sirens close in, multiplying, tightening their net. Arthur holsters his gun and steps back into the shadows, heart pounding now. Not from fear, but from certainty. This city rewards recklessness. It punishes restraint, and it has just noticed him. As helicopters circle and police flood the street, Arthur slips away, blending into the maze of alleys and fire escapes. Somewhere high above, cameras track movement, algorithms flag anomalies, and men who profit from chaos begin asking questions. A man on a horse stopped an armed robbery with one shot. That doesn't happen here, and Los Santos does not tolerate variables it cannot control. Arthur moves until the noise dulls, until the sirens become part of the city's distant breathing rather than its immediate roar. He finds an overpass where the shadow stays cool and the traffic never stops, metal rivers flowing without rest. He ties the horse off behind a concrete pillar, strokes its neck, whispers the kind of promises he's learned never to make out loud. This world has no grass for it, no quiet mornings. He knows that much already. What he doesn't know is how long either of them can survive here. Footsteps echo nearby, fast, careless. A pair of teenagers dart past him, laughing, one clutching a stolen purse, the other glancing back like the chase itself is the thrill. Arthur watches them go, jaw tightening. Back home, theft came with hunger, with desperation. Here, it comes with boredom. He feels old in a way time alone doesn't explain, like the years between him and this place are measured in morals rather than calendars. A news van idles across the street, its screen blaring footage of the robbery he interrupted. The anchor's voice is calm, detached, already turning chaos into entertainment. The camera catches a blurry image of Arthur on horseback, hat brimmed low, gun still smoking. The caption calls him an unknown suspect. Arthur snorts softly. Suspect implies intent. This city hasn't learned yet. He didn't come looking for trouble. Trouble just found him faster than it used to. Night creeps in, not with silence, but with neon. Lights ignite one by one, painting the streets in artificial color, making everything feel louder, sharper, wrong. Arthur leads the horse again, farther now, toward the hills overlooking the city. From above, Los Santos sprawls endlessly, a kingdom of excess and rot glowing beneath the stars. He's seen cities before, but never one that feels so hungry. It doesn't sleep. It waits. A car pulls up behind him, slow, deliberate. The window rolls down, revealing a man with a grin too easy to trust. He talks fast, jokes faster, eyes flicking between Arthur and the horse like he's found a novelty worth exploiting. He offers money, offers protection, offers a place to stay. Arthur listens, face unreadable, letting the man talk himself into confidence. When the pitch ends, Arthur declines with a single shake of his head. The grin falters. The car speeds off, tires screeching in frustration. Another bridge burned without a match being struck. High above, in offices lined with glass and arrogance, men scroll through feeds and pause on the same image. A rider from nowhere, calm under fire, efficient, wrong. One of them leans back, amused. Another frowns, calculating. The city doesn't know Arthur Morgan's name, but it recognizes disruption when it sees it, and disruption always attracts predators. Arthur settles beneath a billboard overlooking the city, the horse finally still. He removes his hat, wipes sweat from his brow, and stares out at a world that feels louder than war. He doesn't pray. He doesn't curse. He simply breathes, grounding himself the only way he knows how. Whatever force dragged him here didn't do it by accident, and Los Santos, in all its noise and madness, has no idea what kind of man it's about to test. The night deepens, and with it comes the city's true voice. Somewhere below, music thumps through walls thin as lies. Gunshots pop like distant fireworks, and laughter cuts through the air with no joy behind it. Arthur sits with his back against cold concrete, rifle resting across his knees, eyes never fully closing. Sleep feels like a mistake here. This place doesn't ambush you from the shadows. It rushes you in the open and dares you to react fast enough. A police cruiser crawls along the road beneath the hill, spotlight sweeping lazily across brush and stone. It passes over Arthur for half a second, then moves on. Too still, too quiet. He lets out a slow breath. Back home, the law hunted men until one side stopped breathing. Here, it watches, waits, builds cases instead of graves. Different methods, same intent. His mind drifts despite himself. Dutch's voice, always promising a future just one job away. The gang fire nights, the smell of rain on dirt roads, the weight of loyalty dragging him forward even when every instinct screamed to turn back. This city wears Dutch's dream like a uniform. Endless opportunity, endless excuses, no accountability. Arthur's jaw tightens. He's seen how that story ends. Down in the city, a deal collapses violently in a nightclub parking lot. Someone bleeds out on polished pavement while others step over the body without slowing down. Arthur watches from afar, unable to hear their words but understanding the scene all the same. Violence without meaning, death without memory. It gnaws at him. A man should at least be remembered for how he lived, not how fast the world forgot him. A phone buzzes somewhere nearby, followed by hushed voices. Arthur melts into shadow as two men approach the overlook, speaking in low tones about opportunities and scores. They stop when they see the horse. Confusion flashes across their faces, then curiosity. One reaches for his pocket. Arthur rises slowly, deliberately, letting them see him clearly. The moon catches his eyes, flat and unblinking. They freeze. He doesn't threaten them, doesn't move closer. He just exists, solid and undeniable. After a long, tense moment, they back away, words stumbling over themselves, and disappear down the hill. The city keeps offering him paths. He keeps refusing the wrong ones. As the night stretches on, Arthur understands something with bone-deep certainty. This world isn't built for redemption. It doesn't forgive. It doesn't slow down long enough to regret. If a man wants to mean something here, he has to carve that meaning himself, one choice at a time, against the current. Far across the city, lights flick on in a quiet suburban home where a man watches the news with a drink in his hand, brow furrowed at the image of a cowboy on horseback framed by chaos. In another part of town, a different man grins at the same footage, excitement bubbling at the thought of meeting something unpredictable. And somewhere between them, a younger man feels a pull he can't explain, like a crossroads he hasn't reached yet. Arthur Morgan pulls his hat low again and looks out over Los Santos, a city that chews up legends and spits out ghosts. He doesn't know who's watching. He doesn't know what comes next. But he knows this much. He didn't survive as long as he did by bending to the world around him. And if this city wants to see what kind of man he is, it's going to have to earn that answer the hard way. Los Santos doesn't introduce its outlaws politely. It throws them at you in broad daylight, wrapped in gunfire and bad decisions. Arthur meets them on the edge of a robbery already collapsing. Sirens screaming, glass raining onto sun-baked pavement, voices shouting over one another with the confidence of men who've never faced consequences they couldn't outrun. He watches from across the street as three figures spill out of a bank, weapons up, tempers frayed. One of them is older, movements sharp but eyes tired, barking orders like he's done this too many times. Another moves with restless energy, laughter bubbling through the chaos, fingers twitching on the trigger like he's itching for the world to give him a reason. The third hangs back, younger, watching everything, weighing every step like he knows this path can still swallow him whole. The situation turns ugly fast. A guard panics, a shot goes wide. The crowd scatters. Arthur doesn't plan to get involved. Not until the laughing one fires again, careless, and a woman drops screaming to the ground. That sound cuts through the noise, drags Arthur forward whether he wants it to or not. He steps out, revolver already in hand, and the street seems to shrink around him. One shot cracks through the air, precise, ending the chaos before it can metastasize. The outlaws turn, stunned, staring at the man who didn't run when everyone else did. For a heartbeat, nobody moves. The older one studies Arthur, recognizing something familiar beneath the hat and dust. The weight of experience, the kind earned through failure as much as success. The wild one grins, delighted, as if he's just met a new toy. The youngest keeps his weapon low, eyes flicking between Arthur and the bleeding guard, uncertainty gnawing at him. Sirens surge closer, forcing decisions. Words are exchanged quickly, sharp and tense. And before Arthur can reconsider, he's moving with them, slipping into a stolen car that smells like sweat and gun oil instead of leather and horse. The engine roars to life, pressing Arthur back into the seat as the city explodes into motion around them. He hates speed, hates the way the world blurs past without giving him time to read it. But he stays calm, steady in his breathing while bullets spark off metal behind them. The wild one whoops with laughter, leaning out the window to return fire like it's a game. Arthur watches him with a hard, measuring look. He's ridden with men like this before, men who confuse noise for strength and chaos for freedom. He knows how that story ends. When they finally shake the pursuit and disappear into the city's veins, the car slows. The older man exhales, tension bleeding from his shoulders, and turns to Arthur with a look that's half gratitude, half suspicion. Names are offered, not promises, not trust, just enough truth to keep things moving. Arthur gives only what he must. He doesn't smile. He doesn't boast. He simply meets their stares and lets the silence speak for him. They pull into a quiet industrial stretch where the city pretends to sleep, engines ticking as heat bleeds from the hood. The older man lights a cigarette with hands that shake just enough to notice, eyes never leaving Arthur as smoke coils between them. He asks where Arthur learned to shoot like that. Arthur shrugs, says nothing. The wild one laughs again, claps Arthur on the shoulder too hard, already telling a story that paints himself as the hero. Arthur doesn't correct him. He's learned that men like this don't hear the truth unless it flatters them. The younger one lingers by the car, staring at the blood on his shoes. Arthur catches his eye and sees something he recognizes. Doubt. Not fear of death, but fear of what living like this turns you into. It's a look Arthur has worn himself, back when the future still felt negotiable. He says nothing, but the understanding hangs there, unspoken, heavy. They talk about plans, fast jobs, big scores, money thrown around like a solution to everything wrong with the world. Arthur listens, arms folded, weighing each word. There's no patience here, no belief in laying low or choosing targets with care. These men steal because they can, because the city rewards speed and spectacle. Arthur realizes he isn't impressed. He's unsettled. This doesn't outlaw life refined by time. It's the same sickness, accelerated. When another job is offered, Arthur hesitates just long enough for the wild one to scoff. The older man watches closely, recognizing that hesitation for what it is. Not weakness, but restraint. It intrigues him. He pushes the job anyway, paints it as clean, necessary. Arthur agrees, not out of trust, but because walking away now would raise more questions than staying. The next score is louder than the last. Guns blaze in tight corridors, alarms shriek without mercy, and the city responds instantly, as if it's been waiting for an excuse. Arthur moves through the chaos with grim efficiency, covering angles the others ignore, dragging a wounded accomplice out of a kill zone while the wild one fires wildly into the shadows. When it's over, when the smoke clears and the cash is counted, the older man looks at Arthur differently. Less like a stranger, more like an asset. Word spreads quickly in a city that feeds on spectacle. An old-school gunman with ice in his veins, a man who doesn't panic, a man who doesn't miss. Arthur feels the weight of eyes on him wherever he goes now, curiosity mixed with hunger. Gangs whisper his description, cops mark his face, opportunists circle closer. The city is beginning to place him, to decide what use he might have. Late that night, alone on a rooftop overlooking the sprawl, Arthur cleans his revolver by neon light. He listens to the distant sirens, the laughter drifting up from streets that never learn. He thinks about the younger one's eyes, about the older man's tired confidence, about the wild one's grin that never reaches his soul. These are not his people, but they are outlaws, shaped by a different age, chasing the same lie. And Arthur knows all too well how dangerous that makes them, especially to themselves. The next few days blur together in a rhythm Arthur doesn't trust. Fast cars instead of horses, safe houses instead of camps, money counted in stacks that feel too clean, too easy. He watches the older man argue with ghosts only he can see, pacing rooms and muttering about control, about keeping things together just a little longer. Arthur has heard those speeches before, delivered under open skies with more conviction, but the same cracks underneath. Time hasn't changed the words. It's only changed the scenery. The wild one drags Arthur into violence like it's a sport. Street fights erupt over nothing. Gunfire answers insults. Arthur steps in when he has to, ends confrontations before they spiral too far. But every time he does, the wild one laughs harder, thrilled by the idea that chaos now has teeth. Arthur sees the danger growing, not just to others, but to themselves. A man who lives only for the moment doesn't notice the cliff until the ground gives way. The younger one sticks close to Arthur during jobs, asking quiet questions when no one else is listening. He wants to know how Arthur stays calm, how he decides when to pull the trigger and when to hold back. Arthur doesn't preach. He just tells him the truth. Every bullet carries weight. Every choice follows you longer than you think. The kid listens, really listens, like someone trying to memorize directions out of a burning building. One night, a job goes wrong in a way Arthur can't ignore. The target panics. Innocents are caught in the middle. The wild one pushes forward anyway, drunk on momentum, screaming for more. Arthur plants himself between him and the chaos, voice low, commanding. For a moment, the wild one hesitates, shocked that someone would dare stand in his way. The older man steps in, diffuses it with practiced lies, promises of bigger scores, better planning. The moment passes, but something fractures. Arthur feels it. So does the city. Afterward, alone with the older man, Arthur finally speaks his mind. He doesn't accuse. He doesn't threaten. He simply asks how many people have to bleed before the dream stops being worth it. The older man says nothing for a long time. When he finally answers, it's with deflection, with humor, with stories about family and freedom that ring hollow in the empty room. Arthur nods, already knowing the truth. Some men don't change worlds. They just repeat themselves in new ones. As their reputation grows, so does the pressure. Jobs get riskier. Allies become liabilities. Law enforcement tightens its grip with methods Arthur's never faced. Surveillance, informants, patience sharpened into a weapon. The wild one thrives under it, daring the world to stop him. The younger one grows quieter. The older man grows desperate. Arthur stands at the center of it all, an anachronism holding the line by sheer force of will. He didn't come here looking for brothers, but the city has a way of dragging men together before tearing them apart. And as Los Santos closes its fist, Arthur understands something with brutal clarity. These outlaws of a new century are sprinting toward an end they refuse to see. And if he stays much longer, they might drag him down with them. The breaking point comes not with a gunshot, but with a choice. A setup that reeks of desperation. A score pitched too fast, too clean, wrapped in confidence that feels more like denial. Arthur listens in silence as the plan unfolds. Eyes drifting to the younger man, catching the flicker of doubt he's learned to recognize. The wild one is already smiling, bouncing on his heels like the world owes him a spectacle. The older man talks about timing, about trust, about how this will fix everything. Arthur hears Dutch in every word. When the moment comes, it unravels exactly as he expects. Police flood the streets with unnatural precision, roadblocks snapping into place like jaws. Gunfire tears through the night, not wild now, but disciplined, relentless. Arthur moves on instinct, dragging the younger man out of a kill zone, covering their retreat while the wild one screams defiance into the darkness. The older man vanishes into the chaos. Plans dissolving faster than promises ever held together. They escape by inches. By luck, Arthur doesn't believe in it. In a safe house that smells of stale fear, the wild one rages, smashing furniture, laughing even as his hands shake. He calls it fun, calls it living. Arthur doesn't argue. He's done arguing with men who can't hear past their own noise. He looks at the younger man instead, sees the weight settling on his shoulders. The realization finally taking root. This life doesn't end in freedom. It ends in cages or graves. Arthur leaves before dawn. No speeches, no confrontations, just absence. He takes what he needs and nothing more, stepping back into a city that feels colder for having known him. From a rooftop, he watches police lights fade into the distance and knows he's changed something, even if only for a moment. Not the city, the people inside it. The older man will keep chasing the lie. The wild one will burn until there's nothing left to ignite. The younger one might choose differently, or he might not. Arthur understands now that this world doesn't need another outlaw chasing money and momentum. It needs someone who remembers what the word used to mean. As the sun rises over Los Santos, Arthur moves through the streets alone, coat catching the morning light, revolver heavy at his side. He hasn't found a place here. He hasn't found peace. But he has learned the shape of the battlefield. And in a city built on excess and betrayal, that knowledge is dangerous. Somewhere behind him, the echoes of sirens and shout and fade. Somewhere ahead, the city waits, patient and cruel. Arthur Morgan walks into it without hurry, carrying an old code through a new century, unaware that his refusal to bend has already set forces in motion that won't let him disappear so easily. Arthur doesn't vanish the way Los Santos expects him to. He doesn't drown in excess or explode in headlines. He lingers on the edges, watching, learning, letting the city reveal itself without the mask it wears for men chasing easy money. He works quiet jobs that don't make the news. Protection without spectacle. Violence without witnesses. When guns come out, it's because there's no other choice left. And when they do, the sound carries a finality the streets aren't used to anymore. Word starts moving, slow and uncertain, about a man who finishes things cleanly and walks away without celebrating. The city resists him at first, it always does. Fixers try to buy him, gangs test him. A few underestimate him and never get the chance to correct the mistake. Arthur doesn't posture, he doesn't escalate. He simply refuses to break his own rules, even when the city pushes hard enough to make breaking them feel easier. When a job turns ugly and civilians are caught in the crossfire, Arthur shuts it down himself, gun leveled not at the enemy, but at the man who caused it. The look of disbelief he gets in return tells him everything. In Los Santos, mercy is treated like betrayal. Police pressure tightens, not because Arthur is loud, but because he's wrong for the system. He doesn't fit profiles. He doesn't chase notoriety. Surveillance footage catches him ending conflicts before they spiral, leaving scenes quieter than expected. Detectives argue over him in rooms thick with stale coffee and frustration. Some call him a ghost. Others call him a threat precisely because he isn't predictable. A man with principles is harder to control than one with appetites. Arthur feels the isolation settle in. No campfire laughter, no shared meals, no illusion of family. Just the hum of the city and the weight of his choices pressing down harder each day. He watches people step over suffering like it's part of the pavement, and it digs at him in ways gunfire never did. This world doesn't just tolerate cruelty. It industrializes it, turn it into content, turn it into profit. A deal finally breaks him. A powerful man wants a rival erased quietly, no mess, no witnesses. Arthur agrees until he sees the target. Not a kingpin, not a killer, but a scared man caught owing the wrong people. Arthur lowers his gun and walks away. The man begging on his knees doesn't understand why he's spared. Neither does the city. But somewhere in that moment, something shifts. Because when Arthur refuses to pull the trigger, Los Santos doesn't shrug and move on. It takes offense. The response is swift and impersonal. Jobs dry up overnight. Doors close before Arthur reaches them. Faces that once nodded in quiet respect turn away like they've never seen him before. The city doesn't punish defiance with anger. It punishes it with erasure. Arthur feels the pressure mount, the unspoken demand to fall back in line, to accept that survival here means compromise. He doesn't. He's done compromising. Violence comes sideways. A warning shot through a diner window. A car followed him a little too long before disappearing. A man stepping out of an alley with a gun drawn, hands shaking, more scared than dangerous. Arthur disarms him without firing, leaves him on the pavement sobbing. The message is clear. They want him dead, but they don't want the mess. Not yet. Arthur adjusts. He moves at night, changes routes, trades visibility for patience. He learns the city's rhythms the way he once learned the land. Where danger pools, where it flows, where it strikes without warning. He watches police patrols and gang movements with the same quiet attention he once gave animal tracks in fresh snow. The terrain has changed, the hunt has not. A chance encounter brings him back into orbit with the younger outlaw he once pulled from the fire. They meet in a run-down garage, oil-stained and quiet, the kind of place the city forgets exists. The kid looks older now, heavier. He talks about scores he turned down, lines he didn't cross. Arthur listens, says little. He doesn't take credit. He never has. But the relief in the kid's voice tells him enough. One person choosing differently matters, even if the city pretends it doesn't. Their meeting doesn't stay secret. Information leaks. It always does. Arthur feels eyes on him again, sharper this time. Not curious, but hostile. A message arrives without words. A body left where Arthur will see it. arranged carefully, deliberately. It's someone he crossed paths with weeks ago, not innocent, not guilty enough to deserve that. Arthur stands over the scene in silence, fists clenched, the city daring him to respond the way it wants. Instead, Arthur does something worse. He starts interfering. He breaks deals before they're finalized, pulls drivers out of convoys and sends them home alive, walks into situations meant to end in blood and drains them of their momentum. The city feels it immediately. Money slows, plans collapse, tempers flare. People who profit from chaos start losing control of their pieces. And for the first time, Los Santos doesn't see Arthur as a criminal problem. It sees him as an infection. Retaliation comes dressed as inevitability. Arthur feels it in the air before it arrives. The way conversations stop when he enters a room, the way engines idle too long outside places he's passed through. The city begins coordinating against him, not loudly but efficiently. Gangs that hate each other suddenly share information. Law enforcement stops reacting and starts anticipating. Los Santos doesn't care about justice, but it despises disruption that can't be monetized. A trap finally snaps shut on a rain-slicked street near the docks. Headlights flare from both ends, engines roaring as men pour out with weapons raised, confident in their numbers. Arthur steps into the open instead of running. Rain beads on his coat, steam rising from asphalt like the city itself is breathing. He doesn't fire first. He speaks, voice low and steady, offering them a chance to walk away. Laughter answers him, nervous, forced, the kind men use when they need to convince themselves they're not afraid. When the shooting starts, it's over faster than they expect. Arthur moves with brutal efficiency, every shot final, every motion economical. Men fall, others flee. The street empties, leaving only rain, smoke, and bodies cooling under flickering lights. By the time sirens arrive, Arthur is gone, leaving behind a message the city understands all too well. Escalation cuts both ways. The fallout is immediate. News feeds light up with speculation. Rumors spiral. Some paint Arthur as a vigilante. Others call him a myth invented to scare low-level crews straight. The truth sits somewhere in between, and that ambiguity gnaws at the people in charge. They prefer enemies they can name, categorize, and dismantle. Arthur refuses to be any of those things. The younger outlaw seeks him out again, panic in his voice this time. He talks about heat closing in, about friends disappearing, about the wild one pushing deeper into madness, daring the city to blink first. Arthur listens, expression unreadable. He knows where this road leads. He's walked it under different skies with different faces, but the end never changes. He tells the kid to get out while he still can. Not someday, now. The words land heavy, final. Arthur stands alone after, staring out over the water as cargo ships drift by like indifferent giants. This city moves goods, not souls. It measures success in volume and velocity. A man who slows it down becomes an obstacle, not a conscience. Arthur understands that fully now. His code isn't just outdated here. It's incompatible. And still, he doesn't abandon it. He knows the cost, knows the city will keep coming, harder each time, until one of them breaks. But Arthur also knows what happens when a man trades his principles for survival. He's buried too many friends who made that choice and called it necessary. Los Santos wanted another outlaw, another name to chase money and momentum until the end came screaming. What it got instead was a man who remembers why lines were drawn in the first place and refuses to let them blur, even as the city tightens its grip around his throat. The pressure doesn't relent, it sharpens. Every step Arthur takes now echoes louder than he intends, every decision carrying weight far beyond its moment. He feels the city closing ranks, systems aligning not out of morality, but efficiency. Cameras linger longer, patrols reroute. Men who once moved freely now hesitate, waiting for instructions that never used to be necessary. Los Santos is adapting, and adaptation here is never gentle. Arthur finds himself back in familiar territory, not geographically, but spiritually, alone against something larger than himself. A world insisting that survival requires surrender. He watches a deal implode from a distance, violence spilling out where negotiation should have lived, and knows it happened because he interfered earlier, because he slowed things down, because he made people nervous. The city doesn't forgive that kind of interference. It multiplies it. A message finally reaches him the only way it can now. Directly. No intermediaries, no threats disguised as business, just an invitation, precise in its timing and location, daring him to show. Arthur doesn't hesitate. He knows better than to believe walking away will end this. Some confrontations aren't chosen, they're inherited. The meeting place is a half-finished high-rise, skeletal against the night sky, wind howling through exposed steel. Men wait inside, armed but restrained, eyes tracking Arthur as he approaches like he's already crossed a line they can't cross. The man in charge speaks calmly, almost respectfully. He talks about balance, about systems, about how cities survive by letting certain evils flow unchecked. Arthur listens without interrupting, rain soaking into his coat, face carved from stone. When it's Arthur's turn to speak, he doesn't argue philosophy. He doesn't justify himself. He says only this: some lines don't exist to be negotiated. They exist to remind men what they are. The silence that follows is heavy, offended. They don't shoot him, not yet. They don't need to. The decision has already been made. Arthur leaves knowing the city has chosen its side. On the walk back down, he feels no triumph, no regret, just clarity. His code was never meant to fit here. It was forged in a slower world, one that pretended choices mattered even when they hurt. Los Santos moves too fast for that. It chews up hesitation and calls it progress. But as Arthur disappears into the maze of streets below, something lingers. Not hope, not change, just discomfort. A sense that the city tried to absorb a man who refused to dissolve, and failed. And in a place built on motion, failure has consequences. Arthur Morgan keeps moving, battered but unbent, carrying a code that doesn't belong and refusing to set it down. The city will come for him again, harder, smarter, relentless. And when it does, it won't just be testing his will. It will be testing whether a world this loud can survive a man who refuses to stop listening to his conscience. Los Santos doesn't explode when it strikes back. It tightens. Streets that once felt chaotic suddenly move with intent, patrols flowing where they shouldn't, traffic rerouting itself like the city is thinking ahead. Arthur notices it first in the quiet. The absence of random violence where it should be. The way crews pull back instead of pushing forward. This isn't fear, it's coordination. Someone has decided he's no longer a problem to manage, but a variable to eliminate. The first real hit comes without warning. Arthur steps out of a cheap motel just before dawn, the sky still bruised purple, when gunfire erupts from a moving vehicle across the street. Bullets tear through plaster and glass, shredding the door behind him. Arthur dives, rolls, comes up firing with controlled fury. But the car is already gone, tires screaming into the distance. No taunts, no mistakes. Just an attempt on his life executed cleanly and abandoned the moment it fails. He doesn't chase. He never has. Chasing is what gets men killed. Instead, he moves. He burns the motel room, dumps gear, vanishes into the city's underbelly before the smoke clears. By noon, his face is everywhere. Grainy footage, half-truths, rumors sharpened into weapons. Law enforcement labels him armed and extremely dangerous. Gangs circulate his name with prices attached. Fixers quietly remove him from their networks, not out of spite, but survival. Associating with Arthur Morgan has become lethal. The city escalates again that same night. A warehouse where Arthur once disrupted a deal goes up in flames, timed carefully to look like retaliation from rivals. Innocent people are hurt. The message is unmistakable. If Arthur wants to play conscience, Los Santos will answer with collateral damage. Arthur watches the fire from a distance, jaw clenched so tight it aches. This is the line they want him to cross. To rush in, to react emotionally, to make himself visible. He doesn't, but the cost carves into him deeper than any bullet ever could. By the third day, the net is fully cast. Drones buzz overhead like mechanical insects. Unmarked vehicles linger at intersections just a second too long. Men Arthur has never seen before begin appearing in places he frequents, their movements too deliberate to be coincidence. The city isn't hunting blindly anymore. I learned his patterns. It's using patience as a weapon. Arthur adapts, but adaptation here feels different. Back home, the land offered hiding places, silence, space to breathe. Los Santos offers none of that. Every shadow belongs to someone. Every rooftop is already watched. He sleeps in fragments, eats standing up, cleans his weapons in the dark. The city never stopped moving, and neither can he. Then they take something from him. Not a friend, not a place. Something worse. Leverage. A mechanic who once helped him without asking questions is found beaten, left alive just long enough to deliver the message. Stay out of our way, or we start taking pieces you can't ignore. Arthur kneels beside the man in a hospital hallway that smells of antiseptic and fear, rage simmering beneath his calm. Los Santos has finally done it. It has made this personal. Arthur leaves the hospital without looking back. He knows the city is watching for a reaction, waiting for him to lash out in a way they can predict and punish. He gives them nothing. Not yet. Rage is a luxury he can't afford. He needs clarity more than blood. He starts dismantling the city's moves the only way he knows how. Piece by piece, without noise. Supply lines vanish overnight. Weapon shipments never arrive. Drivers wake up tied to their own steering wheels, unharmed but terrified, with a single warning carved into the dashboard. Arthur doesn't kill them. He doesn't have to. Fear spreads faster when it's earned. This kind of resistance irritates the people at the top far more than open violence ever could. They respond by tightening the screws further, bringing in professionals who don't posture or threaten. Men trained to think like systems, not soldiers. Arthur feels the shift immediately. The streets go quiet again, but now it's the kind of quiet that comes before an execution. A coordinated ambush hits him near the river channel at dusk. Snipers pin him down while ground units move in from both sides, disciplined and relentless. Arthur fights his way out through precision and grit, leaving behind wrecked vehicles and stunned survivors, but the message is clear. This isn't about sending warnings anymore. It's about ending them. He retreats into the industrial outskirts, finding temporary shelter in a derelict rail yard. There, surrounded by rusted tracks and broken machinery, Arthur finally allows himself to breathe. He thinks about the mechanic, about the younger outlaw he sent away, about the bodies left cooling in his wake. He knows this path, knows where it leads. The difference is, this time, the enemy isn't a gang or a government. It's an entire city. Night falls heavy and humid. Arthur climbs a watchtower overlooking the sprawl, binoculars pressed to his eyes. He watches convoys move with purpose, lights off, routes changing in real time. He's impressed despite himself. Los Santos has learned. It's adapting to him the way predators adapt to prey. A message crackles over a stolen radio, unencrypted and deliberate. They know where he is. They tell him he can still walk away. Disappear, leave the city intact. Arthur lowers the binoculars, staring out at the lights that stretch to the horizon. He doesn't answer. Walking away now wouldn't save anyone. It would just teach the city that pressure works. He shuts off the radio and starts preparing, not for escape, for impact. Arthur knows he can't beat Los Santos head on, but he doesn't need to. He just needs to make it hurt badly enough that the city remembers him, that it hesitates the next time it decides conscience is a liability. He studies the map, tracing routes, targets, pressure points, not with the thrill of a robber planning a score, but with the grim focus of a man choosing where to make his stand. By dawn, the city will move again, and Arthur Morgan will be waiting. Dawn breaks hard and unforgiving, light spilling over concrete like an exposure. Arthur moves before the city fully wakes, slipping through service roads and half-forgotten corridors that even Los Santos hasn't bothered to monetize yet. He doesn't strike at people first. He strikes at motion. A convoy reroutes into chaos when its lead vehicle detonates harmlessly but spectacularly, scattering escorts and clogging an artery the city depends on. Sirens flood the air, response time stretching thin as units scramble to adjust. Arthur is already gone, smoke still curling where he stood seconds ago. The city answers with force. Helicopters rise, sweeping low and aggressive, spotlights cutting through smog and shadow. Arthur runs through a construction site as gunfire chews up scaffolding behind him, dust exploding into the air like shrapnel. He dives through a service tunnel just as concrete collapses where he stood. The city roars in frustration, but beneath that roar is something else now. Strain. Coordination cost energy. Pressure cost mistakes. Arthur exploits every one of them. A safe house goes dark when power's cut at the source. A data hub floods, sparks cascading like fireworks as systems crash. None of it kills anyone. That's deliberate. Death would be simple. This is about disruption, about forcing the city to feel the weight of its own size turning against itself. For the first time, Los Santos stumbles, just a little. They corner him by noon. A parking structure near downtown, levels spiraling upward like a concrete throat. Arthur fights his way to the top, breath ragged, ammo running low, helicopters hovering just out of reach. Snipers pin him down, shots snapping past his head with professional patience. A voice booms through a loudspeaker, calm and practiced, offering surrender. They promise safety, a trial, a chance to explain himself. Arthur almost laughs. He thinks about the mechanic in the hospital bed, about the kid he told to run, about a world that measures lives in efficiency and calls it order. Arthur steps into the open instead, gun lowered but eyes hard. For a heartbeat, the city hesitates. It doesn't know what to do with a man who won't run and won't beg. Then the order comes. The firefight that follows is brutal and contained, echoing off concrete walls as Arthur moves with the last of his strength, every shot deliberate, every step a refusal. He takes wounds he can't afford, blood soaking into his coat, but he keeps moving, keeps forcing them to commit more resources, more attention, more force. The city pours everything it has into stopping one man. And that's when Arthur does the one thing it didn't plan for. He jumps, not to escape, to vanish. Smoke grenades bloom across the rooftop as Arthur disappears over the edge, slamming through a lower level in a crash of metal and pain before crawling into the shadows beneath the structure. By the time teams swarm the area, he's gone, leaving behind nothing but the confusion and the unmistakable sense that Los Santos just overplayed its hand. Because a city that needs this much force to stop one man has already revealed its weakness. And Arthur Morgan is still breathing. The city spends the rest of the day tearing itself apart looking for him. Checkpoints choke major roads. Sirens wail until they blur into a constant scream. News feeds shift tone, no longer certain, no longer confident. The narrative fractures. Some call Arthur a terrorist. Others whisper that maybe the city provoked the wrong man. Doubt seeps in, and Los Santos hates doubt more than violence. Arthur surfaces only after nightfall, battered and stitched together in the dim back room of a closed-down bar on the city's fringe. He moves slowly now, every breath dragging against bruised ribs, but his eyes are clear. He listens to the radio chatter bleeding through static, absorbing how many units were diverted, how many systems are strained, and how many people are asking questions they're not supposed to. He doesn't smile. This isn't victory. It's proof. The city struck back with everything it had, and it still didn't finish him. Arthur knows what that means. The people at the top won't accept this. They can't. A city like Los Santos survives on the illusion of control. If one man can endure this much pressure and keep standing, that illusion cracks. The response won't be measured anymore. It'll be final. He cleans his weapons one last time, movement steady despite the pain. Outside, the city hums, restless and irritated, like an animal that failed to kill its prey. Arthur steps into the night, coat pulled tight, blending into the countless silhouettes moving through streets that never sleep. He doesn't know how much time he has left. He knows only that the next move will decide everything. Because Los Santos isn't preparing another hunt. It's preparing an erasure. Arthur disappears into the maze as the city sharpens itself, unaware that in trying to crush him, it has already exposed something fragile at its core. Control requires belief, and tonight, belief is starting to fail. The man who shouldn't exist is still walking its streets, and the city is running out of ways to make him stop. Los Santos doesn't feel triumphant after trying to erase Arthur Morgan. It feels unsettled. The city keeps moving. Traffic, deals, violence. But something underneath has shifted. The illusion of inevitability is gone. Arthur senses it as he moves through back streets and half-lit corners, a quiet unease clinging to conversations that stop when he passes. They know now, not his name, his meaning. Arthur is running out of time, and he knows it. The wounds from the parking structure haven't healed right, each step a reminder that this body wasn't built for endless war. He could disappear, slip into the sprawl, let Los Santos forget him the way it forgets everything. But redemption doesn't live in escape. It never has. Redemption lives in choosing the harder road when no one's watching. He finds the kid again, the younger outlaw he warned, the one who almost got swallowed by the city whole. The kid looks thinner now, eyes hollow, hands shaking as he talks about debts that never stop growing, about men who smile while they ruin you. Arthur listens without judgment. He doesn't offer money or miracles. He offers a way out, bought with his own remaining leverage. It costs him dearly. The city notices. Word spreads fast when Arthur intervenes not with bullets, but with consequence. A crew pushing families out of their homes backs off overnight after their leader wakes up alone, weaponless, staring at a note he'll never forget. A deal exploiting migrant workers collapses when Arthur drags its details into the light where even Los Santos can't ignore it. These aren't grand gestures. They're small corrections in a world that thrives on imbalance. The response is swift and vicious. The city labels him unpredictable, unstable, dangerous beyond reason. They're right about one thing. Arthur isn't acting rationally anymore. He's acting deliberately. He knows every good thing he does shortens his lifespan here. He accepts that without ceremony. Arthur returns to the river channel at sunset, watching the water crawl beneath concrete bridges like it's ashamed of where it flows. He thinks about the life he lived before this one, about mistakes that followed him across time and steel and neon. Back then, redemption felt like a rumor, a word men used when they were already dying. Here, in a city that rots in the open, it feels almost rebellious. The city prepares its final answer. Arthur feels it in the way the night grows quiet again, and how traffic thins without explanation. He knows what's coming. He doesn't run. He moves toward it, toward a place where deals are made and buried beneath layers of profit and silence. If Los Santos wants to erase him, it will have to do it where the truth can't be hidden. Arthur Morgan isn't trying to win. He's trying to matter. The place is a luxury high-rise overlooking the city, all glass and elevation, the kind of building designed to remind people how small they are. Arthur enters through a service elevator, ignored by cameras that have already been paid to look away. Inside, the air smells clean and expensive. Nothing like the streets below where consequences usually live. Men wait for him in a wide room washed in artificial light, their confidence brittle, rehearsed. They speak first. They always do. They talk about opportunity, about how Arthur could disappear clean if he'd just stop forcing the city to look at itself. They frame his actions as wasteful, emotional, unnecessary. Arthur lets them talk. He studies their faces, noting how none of them have dirt under their nails. When he finally speaks, it's not anger that fills his voice. It's disappointed. He tells them they're afraid of a man who refuses to play along, and they hate him for it. The violence, when it comes, is sudden and ugly. No speeches, no mercy. Arthur moves through the room like a force of nature stretched thin, every motion fueled by purpose rather than rage. He takes wounds he doesn't react to, keeps pushing forward, forcing them to confront him up close instead of through intermediaries. By the time the shooting stops, the room is quiet, except for Arthur's breathing and the hum of the building itself. He staggers to the window, blood trailing behind him, and looks out over Los Santos one last time. The city glitters, indifferent and beautiful, a machine that will keep running long after he's gone. Sirens rise in the distance, helicopters close in. Arthur knows he won't leave this building alive. He's known it since he chose not to disappear. He doesn't feel regret. He feels relief. Because somewhere below, the kid he helped is getting on a bus out of town. Families he protected are sleeping behind locked doors without fear tonight. The city will bury what happened here, rewrite it, sanitize it. But it won't erase the ripple. It never fully can. Arthur slumps against the glass as the lights flicker, vision blurring. He thinks about redemption, not as forgiveness, not as salvation, but as a final act of honesty. A man choosing what he stands for when there's nothing left to gain. Los Santos didn't break him. It revealed him. When the doors finally burst open and shadows flood the room, Arthur Morgan is still standing. And in a city that devours everything, that might be the most dangerous thing of all. They expect him to fall, to collapse under the weight of blood loss and inevitability. Instead, Arthur turns to face them, steadying himself against the glass, forcing his legs to hold. The men flooding the room hesitate for just a second too long, not out of mercy, out of disbelief. They've seen killers. They've seen desperation. They haven't seen resolve like this in a long time. Arthur doesn't raise his weapon. He doesn't need to. His presence alone has become the statement. The city wanted him erased quietly, efficiently, without myth or meaning. What it got instead was a moment it can't fully control. A man standing at the top of its own monument to excess, refusing to bow. Shots ring out. The impact finally drives him to his knees. Arthur's vision narrows, the world pulling inward, but his mind stays clear. He thinks of open skies, of dirt roads stretching beyond the horizon. He thinks of mornings where the air didn't taste like metal. He thinks of the people he couldn't save, and the few he did. It's enough. The glass behind him cracks, spiderwebbing under the strain as his weight presses back. Los Santos continues below, oblivious, alive, already forgetting. That's fine. Redemption was never about being remembered. It was about choosing, even when the choice came too late. Arthur exhales slowly, deliberately, like a man laying down a burden he carried longer than anyone knew. When the final shot comes, it doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like punctuation. By morning, the story is already changing. Headlines strip away context. Officials issue statements. The narrative tightens into something manageable. A dangerous man was neutralized. A threat eliminated. order restored. The city breathes easier telling itself that lie. But lies leave residue. Weeks later, crews hesitate before pushing too far. Fixers double-check names they used to discard. A few people get out while they still can, chasing quieter lives they didn't think were possible. No one mentions Arthur Morgan aloud. They don't have to. The absence is enough. Los Santos keeps rotting. It always will. But somewhere deep in its foundations, a hairline fracture remains. A reminder that even the loudest, fastest worlds can be forced to slow down, if only for a moment. Arthur Morgan never belonged here. And that's exactly why he mattered. The city never builds a monument for him. There's no plaque, no name etched into steel or stone. Los Santos doesn't honor men like Arthur Morgan. It consumes them, files them away as problems are solved. But long after the glass is replaced and the high-rise resumes its quiet arrogance, something lingers in the air. A subtle hesitation, a pause where there used to be none. People feel it without understanding why. A gunman lowers his weapon instead of pulling the trigger. A fixer declines a job that smells too rotten, too familiar. A kid who should have died young doesn't because he remembers a man who told him to run and meant it. These moments don't make headlines. They don't change the city overnight, but they exist. And in Los Santos, existence is rebellion. Arthur's story becomes fragmented, passed in whispers and half-truths. Some say he was a ghost. Others swear he was a relic from a forgotten age, a man who didn't know how the world worked anymore. A few, very few, understand the truth, that he knew exactly how it worked and chose to stand against it anyway. The city adapts, as it always does. New predators take old thrones. Money keeps moving. Blood keeps spilling. But something is different now. The machine hesitates before grinding quite so freely. It remembers resistance. It remembers the consequences. It remembers a man who couldn't be bought, redirected, or erased cleanly. Arthur Morgan never tried to save Los Santos. He tried to remind it that souls exist, even here. And in a world that measures worth in profit and speed, that reminder is dangerous. It plants doubt. It invites choice. It whispers that no matter how rotten the world becomes, a man can still decide what kind of footprint he leaves behind. Arthur's was heavy, uneven, humans. And for a city built to forget, that might be the closest thing to redemption it will ever know. Los Santos keeps spinning. Neon still burns. Sirens still sing. The world Arthur Morgan left behind doesn't change its direction, but it remembers the resistance. Because somewhere between greed and gunfire, a man proved that even in a rotten world, choice still matters. Not the choice to win, not the choice to survive, but the choice to stand for something when standing costs everything. Arthur Morgan was never meant for this century, and that's exactly why it will never forget him.